Church. I am very excited to be here with you this morning. Wasn't the video fun to see of the 6G games that happened this week? It was an incredible week, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of and put together. We gave out 31 gold medals, 31 silver medals, and 31 bronze medals to all the participants that won their events. So that's fun. We really enjoyed having the opportunity to let Cornerstone Church be a family and engage the community and just be present in gathering and in celebrating our gifts that God has given us with one another. Here at Cornerstone Church, we are here for one purpose, and that is to connect people to Christ and His community. And everything we do revolves around that. And here at Cornerstone Church, one of the values that we are focusing on today is gather. And I am really excited to talk about gathering because it is the one that I relate to and connect to the most. So, the mission statement for gathering here, just to update you if you're not aware, is investing in others and inviting them to experience faith together. What a beautiful statement. We are gathering today as we are here. We gather on Wednesdays with Kid Venture, with youth, with Rooted. We gather when we meet in our houses. We gather when we play Olympic Games. We gather, it goes on and on, right? I would start to argue that everything we do when we interact with human beings that God created is gathering with His people. And so I don't want to go into a sermon about what gathering is or why it's important. But when we are intentional about gathering with people throughout everything we do in our lives, I want us to figure out, how do we gather well? How do we gather well? So if you have your Bibles or your electronic devices that doubles as a Bible, I invite you to turn to 1 Kings chapter 19. 1 Kings chapter 19. And as you turn there, it'll also be on the screens. But as you turn there, I'm going to give just a couple, 15-second context of what we are talking about. Elijah is the main subject of today. Elijah, in the few verses before this, is running for his life. Queen Jezebel, the ruler of the area at the time, has just threatened his life, and he is running. His anxious and anxiety thoughts are taking over, and he is stressed out and running and running. And that is where we catch our story today. He feels alone. He feels stressed out. The world doesn't feel right, and that is where we're going to open at 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 9 through 15. Let's read the word of the Lord. There he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He said, "I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." Whew, drama, man. Verse 11. And he said, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He said, "I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." And the Lord said to him, ... The story continues. I love this story. But does it feel slightly wrong to end the scripture reading today right before the Lord speaks? Does it just feel slightly wrong to everybody? Now, I value what the Lord says. That is important. But I believe sometimes, church, we focus so much on what the Lord is saying that we don't pay attention to how he is present in our lives. And that is what I want us to notice and pay attention today, how the Lord is present. If we quickly recap the verses we read, Elijah is having a full-fledged panic, anxiety attack before the Lord. He is standing there before the Lord, letting him know everything is not okay, God. This is everything that's going wrong. Do you see me? This is not okay. In the presence of the creator of the universe. I would argue, church, that this is the first part to gathering well. It is okay to not be okay. It is okay to not be okay. Life is full of ups and it's full of downs. We all know that. But we don't give ourselves grace. We don't give ourselves grace when life is going down, when life is feeling hard, when it's tough. And sometimes we give ourselves the notion that we can't even approach God and his family and the church without figuring out our lives first. Sometimes we have this idea in our heads that if I'm following Christ, if I am truly following after him, then clearly my life shouldn't be as fallen apart as this. And I don't want people to see that. But church, the first part to gathering well is it's okay to not be okay. We have to tell ourselves that and give ourselves grace. And as a church body and community, we need to, as we gather, we need to create a safe place where it's okay to not be okay. For our kids, for our youth, for married, for singles, for old, for young, the list goes on. Everybody, it's okay to not be okay. I believe that's the first part to gathering well as a church. As a youth pastor, I talk and meet with a lot of students. Surprise! Never saw that coming. Now, when I talk with a lot of students, yes, I talk about a lot of biblical things, a lot of spiritual things, but I would say the primary thing that I talk with students about is their anxiety and stress and stuff. Anxiety and stress. And how to manage anxiety and stress. This book, Seen, is a book that I give out to all of my youth leaders. And in it, at the start of it, it starts to explain how the human brain functions. And so just if I give you just a little illustration real quick, if everyone looks at me and I am creating with my hands just an invisible brain. Can everyone see the invisible brain right here? And right down the middle of me, there's the two halves of the brain. Can we see that so far? The left side of the brain is the logical thinking side of the brain, okay? The right side of the brain is the emotions and, the emotion side of the brain, the feeling side. And these two sides of the brain, God created perfectly to work together in a perfect processing function. When a healthy brain is processing perfectly, it will go back and forth between emotion and logic. Back and forth perfectly. And God created that beautifully. Now, let's add stress. Cortisol is a stress hormone. That when it enters the brain, it starts to clog up that middle section there. And it starts to make it difficult for the two sides of the brain to talk to each other. And so when you add more and more stress, more and more cortisol, the stress hormone in the brain, it's hard for the two sides of the brain to talk. And so you can picture the traffic jam of stress and anxiety when all of your emotions are so big and so tough, and the world is so difficult. And we talk, and you can picture like a kid or a teenager or your spouse or someone you know that's close that is having a moment, a tough moment, and suddenly they're stressed out about life, and you talk to them suddenly and go, use logic, use your brain, think for a moment. Do we see the problem here? Is that when we are full of stress, we actually can't access that part of our brain very well. And the more stress that is there, it creates this wall. The book Seen does a great job to start to explain how the power of connection can heal despair. This lonely part of the brain, when you can no longer access the other side of your brain, the logic side, it talks about being in despair. You are so alone and full of your own thoughts that you can't even get the two sides of your brain to work together, much less life. This is what we call despair. Psalms 69, verse 20, I think says it best. Reproaches have broken my heart, so that I am in despair. I looked for pity, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none. Now, I would love to share with you a couple of short paragraphs from this book Scene that really ties the whole story together here. Research on attachment and neuroplasticity confirms that our brains are wired to respond to love and empathy even when we're in despair. When we connect with another person or when someone empathizes with us and helps us feel seen, the two sides of the brain begin to heal. How does this happen? Oxytocin, a hormone responsible for healthy attachment, floods our brain and begins to bring the two sides of the brain back together. As we experience connection, love, empathy, and secure attachment, the two sides rejoin. As a result, despair lessens. The brain's repairing can restore a wholeness that allows emotional processing to then flip over into logical processing. This happens in the context of healthy relationships, and it happens in the context of love. Church, if we want to gather well, we need to be a place of love and empathy. We need to be a place of love and empathy. This is a safe place, and it's okay to not be okay. So how do we do this well? I have a short video I'd love to show you. I absolutely love this video, and I hope you can enjoy it too. Uh-oh, do we have sound?
It feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see.
So good. Am I right? Oh, I love that video. Hello, lights. Thank you. All right. Sometimes we think that helping someone means we have to fix all their problems. Now, let's back up for a second and let's clarify. Yes, God does give us the ability and the time and the strength and the gifts to help people. And that is good, and God encourages that, and we encourage that. Part of being a church and gathering as a church is being able to have the opportunities to help people. That is beautiful. But sometimes we focus so much on fixing stuff that we miss the people. We miss the people. It's not about the nail. Sometimes we think that loving someone is fixing their problems. Sometimes we don't want to be emotionally present. And our excuse, whether we are aware of it or not, is to fix the person rather than be present with the person. Sometimes we fix things so we don't have to put time into them. Now, when that's your car or a kitchen or a house or something like that, that is a good thing you can put time into most of the time. That is a good thing to put your time into. However, when fixing stuff becomes your spouse, your kids, your friends, the guest that comes to church for the first time, that's the worst thing we could possibly do, is to try to fix them. People need to feel seen. People need to feel heard. People need to know that their feelings and their emotions are real. That what they are experiencing in their brain is real. That they are seen and loved for who they are. Not because of all the problems in life. When we listen, when we give them our attention, it's called holding space. Maybe you're familiar with that term, holding space. Creating a safe environment to be present with someone without them being fixed. I believe God knew this when talking to Elijah. I believe he knew this. Elijah is fully present in the presence of God and sharing with him everything that's wrong with the world. Everything that just does not feel right, that doesn't add up. This is not fair, God. Now, can you picture the battle in our own brains that we give ourselves in our conversation with God? Imagine if God talked to Elijah the way we have God talk to us in our brains sometimes. It might look something like this. Come on, Elijah, get up. We got places to be and people's lives to change. We don't have time for your moping and sleeping and falling apart. Do you honestly think that crying about it is going to help? Whew, that's heavy. And of course, God wouldn't say that. But we talk to ourselves that way in the presence of the creator of the universe. In the presence of God, Elijah was able to fall apart and be seen and be heard. I believe the second part to gathering well is not about the nail. It's not about fixing people. It's about being present with people through love and empathy. The third part of gathering well I want to talk about has to do with consumerism. Consumerism. We live in a very consumerism-based world. Everything, if I be dramatic for a moment, everything is being sold everywhere, all the time, everywhere around the world, all times. You get the picture. We live in a very consumeristic world. And as the consumer, we have to point at ourselves. As the consumer, we get to ask the questions, what do I want? What do I get out of this? Is this a waste of my time and energy and resources? Now, when we're buying a house or a car or various things in life, that's okay. Asking those questions can be good. The problem is, I believe the consumeristic mindset has actually poisoned the way we do life in ways that we are not aware of, including the way we gather with people. It starts to become a problem and an issue when we gather with people and we start to ask the questions, what do I get out of this? What is in this for me? Is this person a waste of my time, energy, and resources? I would argue that destroys the mission that God has for us to be present with people. Gathering well with others is more than just about us, contrary to our consumerism culture. We are a blessing and an encouragement to others by merely existing, by deciding to be present with people, by showing up, just by being there. We don't have to be doing anything. We are a blessing to others by existing. God created it that way, and that's beautiful. There's another book I want to quickly mention, What If Jesus Was Serious? Not Scarious. What If Jesus Was Serious? By Skye Jethani. And there's a quick, short paragraph I want to read. Sometimes Our circumstances make us blind to God, and we become vulnerable to doubts and fears, the lows, right? In such times, we need our friends, we need our community, we need the church. When our world is hidden in darkness and we can no longer see the goodness of God, that is when we must borrow the eyes of another. This is what it means for the church to gather and encourage one another. I love that line. When we can no longer see God, we must borrow the eyes of another to see the goodness of God. That is what it means to gather as a church. Gathering takes time. Gathering takes time. There's no way around that. Now, we also live in a world that says time is money. How do we balance those? What? I believe that where you put your time is where you are investing. And if we go back to the gather statement as a church, it says, investing in others and inviting them to experience faith together. Investing your time is an investment. Now, real quickly, this is not a sermon on never think about yourself. Never think about yourself and you need to be busier. Okay? That is not what this sermon is about. This is not a sermon on you need to be busier and you need to never think about yourself. That is not what this is about. In fact, having boundaries is essential to gathering well. Sometimes we are so busy that the idea of having another conversation with another human being is just too much. And that is when I believe God starts to challenge us that maybe we need to say no to a few things. There are times in life when we don't need to say yes to more, we actually need to say no to more. That we can open up our schedule so that way when God has us be present with someone, we have the opportunity to say, yes, Lord. Gathering takes time. Evaluating if we have the mental, physical, or emotional energy or time to put into something isn't bad. That's good. And being fully attuned to yourself is essential to gathering well. But because of the consumeristic mindset that has nurtured us since we were born without us even knowing it, we have to constantly be checking our intentions and motivation to make sure that we are not asking the wrong questions when gathering with people. When we gather, we are not consuming. We are engaging. When we engage, excuse me. I ran all the games this week, so my voice is already spent, so bear with me. When we engage with others, it's not just what do I get out of this. Engaging both things, people, objects, whatever you're engaged to, are both giving and taking together. And it's beautiful. Just like the two sides of the brain. We have the logical side of the brain and the emotional side of the brain, and God created them both perfectly to work together in a perfect relationship. Both essential, both created by God. Engaging when both people are giving and receiving, and it's beautiful, and God intended it that way. My wife said it so beautifully this week. Gathering is about caring and being cared for. It's both. The third part to gathering well, it's about investing and engaging. Investing takes time, and engaging is a two-way street. So how do we gather well? It's okay to not be okay. Be real with yourself. Be real with others, and don't let that stop you from being present with others. It's not about the nail. It's not about fixing others or seeing others as projects. It's about being intentionally present with others. It's about investing and engaging. Let's check our motives and be intentional about experiencing faith with others. As we go into Fun Month, and as we go into the rest of the summer and in the rest of the fall, I don't want us, church, to just value gathering. Let's live out gathering. And I don't want us to just value the 6 G's. It's something our church does, just the 6 G's. I don't want us to just value them. I want us to live out 6G.